Do you think romantic love the kind that keeps you up at night, that makes you check your phone every 5 minutes waiting for one specific reply? Do you think that's a modern invention? Something Hollywood dreamed up, or Shakespeare or greeting card companies trying to sell you something in February? It isn't. It's at least 30,000 years old, running quietly in the human brain long before anyone had a word for it. Long before anyone could have written it down, even if they'd wanted to. Somewhere in the last ice age, around a fire that's now just a smear of ash under 30 feet of soil, someone lay awake, unable to sleep, unable to think about anything except one specific person. Not food, not the cold. One person. Most people assume this is a fairly recent luxury. The idea goes something like this: survival was so brutal back then that there was no room left over for romance. Love in this telling is something that showed up once life got comfortable enough to afford it. A byproduct of leisure invented by poets a few centuries ago and perfected by movie studios since. That version of the story falls apart the moment anyone actually goes looking for evidence. In 1992, anthropologists William Jankowiak and Edward Fisher set out to test whether romantic love was a Western invention or something closer to universal. This wasn't a casual survey. They combed through the standard cross-cultural sample, a well-established database of ethnographic records from 166 distinct societies spanning every inhabited continent, looking for a specific signature: intense longing for one particular person, anxiety about whether that person felt the same way, songs, poems, or elopement stories built specifically around that ache. Cultures with no shared history, no shared language family, some of them with essentially no contact with the industrialized world at the time they were documented. They expected to find clear evidence of romantic love in a modest handful of societies, probably clustered around places already touched by Western media and literature. That was the working hypothesis worth testing. They found clear evidence in 147 out of 166. That's not a trend. That's close to universal across societies, with no contact with each other, no shared literature, no shared Hollywood. Whatever romantic love is, it isn't something one culture taught the rest of the world to feel. So if it isn't cultural, where is it actually coming from? This is where biological anthropologist Helen Fisher's research gets genuinely strange. Fisher and her colleagues recruited people who described themselves as newly intensely in love, slid them into fMRI scanners, and showed them a photograph of the person they loved, mixed in among photographs of emotionally neutral acquaintances. The brain activity wasn't vague, diffuse, or scattered across the general emotional centers the way you might expect from something as fuzzy sounding as a feeling. It lit up specific identifiable regions with striking consistency across almost every subject, most notably the ventral tegmental area, a small structure deep in the midbrain that produces dopamine and feeds it into the brain's core reward pathway. It's the same fundamental circuitry involved in the rush of cocaine and in the compulsive pull of a slot machine. Fisher wasn't reaching for a poetic metaphor when she started describing early-stage romantic love as something closer to addiction than emotion. The obsessive thinking about one person that crowds out almost everything else, the euphoria at their attention, the withdrawal-like misery when they're unavailable or unreachable, those aren't figures of speech. They're the observable behavioral signature of a dopamine-driven reward system that is locked onto a single specific, irreplaceable target and will not easily be redirected toward a substitute. Here's the detail that should genuinely unsettle you. This circuitry doesn't appear to be something modern. Human brains grew because life got easier. It shows the hallmarks of something ancient and conserved, present in the basic architecture of the mammalian brain, repurposed and intensified in humans specifically, which raises an obvious question. Why would evolution wire something this specific, this narrow, this obsessive, this costly in terms of sleep and food and attention into the brain of a species already struggling to survive? The answer connects back to a problem every parent in the deep past faced, and it's a brutal one. Human infants are born catastrophically helpless compared to almost every other mammal, and they stay that way for years, not weeks. A newborn gazelle can stand and run within an hour of birth. A human infant can't reliably hold up its own head for months. Raising one required an enormous sustained investment of calories, protection, teaching, and constant attention. Stretched out over a decade or more often, more than one adult could reliably provide alone, especially while also gathering food, defending against predators, and surviving winters no thermostat was fixing. Romantic love in this light isn't a poetic bonus layered on top of survival by some later, more comfortable version of humanity. It's very plausibly a piece of survival equipment evolved on the same timeline as everything else that makes human childhood so absurdly long. A neurochemical mechanism whose entire evolutionary job was to keep two specific adults intensely irrationally focused on each other for long enough to get one helpless infant through its most dangerous years. Lust gets two people into the same place briefly. Long-term attachment keeps a pair bond stable for years afterward, quietly. Romantic love sitting right between the two is the glue phase, the mechanism that makes someone choose one particular partner out of everyone available and then obsess irrationally and expensively over keeping that choice at exactly the moment in a relationship's timeline when that choice mattered most for a child's odds of survival. You probably assumed walking into this video that love is something you feel because you decide to freely in the moment about whoever happens to catch your attention. That assumption isn't quite right. You're not freely choosing to feel this. An ancient reward circuit is choosing for you, and it's been running the exact same program for tens of thousands of years. Picture the scene properly. It's cold enough that breath shows in the firelight. Each exhale a small pale cloud that catches the orange glow for a second before dissolving. Someone sits slightly apart from the rest of the group, not because they've been excluded, but because their attention keeps drifting again and again toward one particular person across the flames, the particular tilt of their head as they laugh at something, the specific rasp of their voice cutting through the general low murmur of the camp. Every time that person glances back, there's a small physical jolt, a tightening somewhere behind the sternum that has nothing to do with the cold night air. When they get up to gather more firewood, the minutes stretch strangely, the way time only stretches when you're waiting for one specific thing. Nothing about the night has actually changed. The food is the same, the fire is the same, the darkness past the firelight holds exactly the same dangers it held an hour ago. But the entire emotional temperature of the evening now depends on the location of one particular person relative to that fire. That sensation is not a modern condition. It's the same ventral tegmental area, the same dopamine circuitry. Fisher found lighting up on a scanner running on a body that has never seen a phone, a movie, or a love song, because it doesn't need any of those things to exist. Now think about tonight. You send a message and watch the three dots appear, disappear, appear again, each flicker, triggering a fresh little spike of anticipation. You check the screen for a reply. You already know hasn't arrived 60 seconds after checking it the last time, and again 40 seconds after that. That specific, slightly humiliating loop of checking isn't a personality flaw, and it isn't something dating apps invented from nothing to keep you anxious, though they've gotten extremely good at exploiting a system that was already there. It's the identical reward circuit Fisher found lighting up on a scanner running the identical ancient program, just relocated from a person's silhouette across a fire to a gray notification bar at the top of a glowing screen. Somewhere in the last ice age, someone lay awake beside a fire that's now just a thin smear of ash under 30 feet of soil, unable to think about anything except one specific person. Tonight, you're doing the exact same thing on a device that person from the ice age couldn't have begun to imagine, powered by a brain circuit they would have recognized instantly without a moment's explanation needed.